Hello students, today we're going to continue with our reading of The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, Chapter 12. Before we start reading, we're going to take a look at some vocabulary words that we're going to see in this chapter. The first we've seen before, frenzied, which means that you do something in a wildly excited or uncontrolled way. So if you were to run around your house yelling, arms waving all over the place, you would be in a frenzied mood. Exhilarated. Exhilarated is like the word happy. Happy is a synonym for exhilarated, but exhilarated is happy times 10. It's a feeling of tremendous excitement or great happiness. So you are so happy and excited when you feel exhilarated. And then our next word is hobo, which is a noun. A hobo is another word for a homeless person. And this picture here is a very typical picture of a hobo. There was a time in the United States when a lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of people became homeless, and sometimes they would ride on railroad tracks, walk on railroad tracks, ride on railroads, and they looked a lot like this gentleman, stereotypically with these poles, with a package on the back that held their things. So instead of a backpack, they would be carrying something like this. So a hobo is a homeless person from this kind of time frame. And then we have the word scraggly, which is an adjective that means ragged, thin, or untidy. This is a perfect example of a scraggly tree. It doesn't have a lot of leaves on it. It's kind of old and withered looking and thin looking. It doesn't look very healthy. That's what the word scraggly describes. All right, so let's get to our book and let's continue on with chapter 12. Chapter 11 left us with kind of a cliffhanger. The garbage shifted again, and suddenly, miraculously, the beautiful buttery light of late afternoon shone on Edward's face. So let's see who's rescued Edward and what's going to become of him next. Edward did not have much time to savor the light, for the dog suddenly peered above him, dark and shaggy, blocking his view. Edward was pulled up out of the garbage by his ears, dropped, and then picked up again, this time around the middle, and shaken back and forth with a great deal of ferocity. The little dog growled deep in its throat and then dropped Edward again and looked him in the eye. Edward stared back. "Hey, get out of here, you dog!" It was Ernest, king of garbages and therefore king of the world. The dog grabbed Edward by his pink dress and took off running. "That's mine! That's mine! All garbages is mine!" Ernest shouted. "You come back here!" But the little dog did not stop. The sun was shining, and Edward felt exhilarated. Who, having known him before, would have thought that he would be so happy now, crusted over with garbage, wearing a dress, held in the slobbery mouth of a dog, being chased by a madman. But he was happy. The dog ran and ran until they reached a railroad track. They crossed over the tracks, and there, underneath a scraggly tree in a circle of bushes, Edward was dropped in front of a large pair of feet. The dog began to bark. Edward looked up and saw that the feet were attached to an enormous man with a long dark beard. "What's this, Lucy?" asked the man. He bent and picked up Edward. He held him firmly around the middle. "Lucy," said the man, "I know how much you enjoy rabbit pie." Lucy barked. Yes, I know. Rabbit pie is a true delight, one of the pleasures of our existence." Lucy let out a hopeful yip. "And what have we here? What you have so graciously delivered to me is definitely a rabbit, but the best chef in the world would be hard-pressed to make him into a pie." Lucy growled. "This rabbit is made a China girl. The man held Edward closer to him. They looked each other in the eye. "You're made of china, aren't you, Malone?" He gave Edward a playful shake. "You are some child's toy, am I right? And you have been separated somehow from the child who loves you." Edward felt again the sharp pain in his chest. He thought of Abilene. He saw the path leading up to the house on Egypt Street. He saw the dusk descending and Abilene running toward him. Yes, Abilene had loved him. "So, Malone," said the man. He cleared his throat. You are lost. That is my guess. Lucy and I are lost too." At the sound of her name, Lucy let out another yip. "Perhaps," said the man, "you would like to be lost with us. I have found it much more agreeable to be lost in the company of others. My name is Bull. Lucy, as you may have surmised, is my dog. Would you care to join us?" Bull waited for a moment, staring at Edward, and then with his hand still firmly around Edward's waist, the man reached one enormous finger up and touched Edward's head from behind. He pushed it so it looked as if Edward were nodding his head in agreement. "Look, Lucy, he is saying yes," said Bull. "Malone has agreed to travel with us. Isn't that swell?" Lucy danced around Bull's feet, wagging her tail and barking. And so it was that Edward took to the road with a hobo and his dog. It's really interesting to me how this author has taken Edward and put him in so many different settings with so many different kinds of people. You know, Edward starts out as the doll of a very wealthy family and a very nice little girl, Abilene. And then Edward finds himself owned by a fisherman and his wife, people who don't have nearly as much money, probably, as Abilene and Pellegrina and their family. And now Edward is in the company of a hobo, a homeless man who's traveling around. And up here, this paragraph where Bull says, "I have found it much more agreeable to be lost in the company of others," kind of means Bull is kind of saying, I'm not sure where I'm going, but it's always more fun and it's always more agreeable to go somewhere with someone else, to have company along with you. So now Edward finds himself in the company traveling with this hobo. And I can't wait to see what happens in the next chapter.